Hey guys, let's talk about Min Hee-jin's second press conference. May I remind you that HYBE has had 0 press conferences and they've just been using press releases, standard statements to the media. Min Hee-jin, who says that she wants HYBE to stop their media play, has already had 2 national emergency press conferences where the reporters had to drop what they were doing and the newsrooms had to make a choice to sacrifice other stories to cover hers. She's had 2 of those. HYBE has had 0. And not only that, after her second press conference, she did an exclusive interview with KBS. So KBS is the nation's representative broadcasting station. And we're not going to go through the whole thing. We're not going to go through the whole press conference. Yes, she kept it under 2 hours, about 1 hour and 45 minutes. But we already know what she's about, and it looked like the reporters weren't having any of her nonsense. So in the last press conference, we saw that she came out right with that green striped semi-sweater, I don't know what you call that, long sleeve shirt, and her blue LA Dodgers baseball cap. And she hid under this woman card of like this oppressed female in Korean society. Well, honey, she turned in her woman card this time because she done maxed it out and people aren't buying it anymore. So she tried to upgrade to the human platinum card to see if they would take it. But dang, these reporters this time were a bit tougher on her, and they were like, no, sorry, why don't you come with the concise, short, quick truth card? We'll accept that. So she came dressed in yellow. She said hello to all of the photographers. Remember the last time she had such an issue with, oh, sorry, I'm just an ordinary person. I can't handle the flashes because I won't be able to properly give my monologue for 2 hours if all these cameras are popping at me. And she seemed fine with it. I don't know how. Well, she was dressed in this yellow sort of matronly but modernized version of what a housewife, because let's be honest, she was playing the hysterical, down to your last nerves housewife in the living room. Now she dressed up as sort of like the housewife that's gonna go meet her friends at like a Blue Bottle cafe, a little bit fancier than Starbucks, but not too fancy because she still has to appeal like she's a regular person. Not that she was on her way to like almost make $200 million if she just wasn't so greedy. And so her demeanor was completely different. And a lot of the media pointed that out, and they're just like, you ain't cursing. You're not hysterical. She still cried, but I think the Kleenex was still dry. But she wasn't hysterical. And she said that, because the last time I was in such a bad state, I was wearing the same clothes for 3 days. I don't think so. Those clothes look freshly pressed, okay? I don't think so. But she's saying like, I wore the same clothes for 3 days. I was in such a bad mental state. And then she's just sort of beaming. She's sort of gloating, saying like, because, yesterday the injunction went so well. And, I feel like I've cleared my name of all the false accusations. Okay, so she's already way accelerating what the legal system did not even say. And she's just saying like, I'm vindicated, I won. So she took a different stance. And this time though, her character play, yes, was to be still appealing to moms, still appealing to the woman, female in Korea factor. And most of the time, people would probably say, outside from Korea looking at this like, dang, she looks like she has multiple personality disorder. How can she just look so different? And in Korea, people are still people were still like, the big question, one of the first question was like, oh, your appearance looks a lot different. And the reason, of course, now they're saying that, I think, because they're suspicious of her. But had they completely still had been taken in by Min Hee-jin, what in Korean culture would make sense? Like, how would people accept that? Essentially because, there's the living room mom and then there's the Starbucks mom. So like when you go out in public, yes, I think she was trying to appeal to that, and that was her feasible transition in her image. Because otherwise it just looks so weird and manipulative, and like she's doing another show, and it makes us question, who are you really? Which the reporters, I think, really did. But why would she choose that route? Because we're going to take a look at this press conference and really focus more on like, what is her play here, and what manipulation tactics is she using, and what statements did she make that were really false? Because she transitioned not only from living room mom yelling at the kids to Starbucks mom or blue bottle mom, and then she even took a step further to then repeatedly throughout the press conference say, I'm just a human, I'm a human too. Why? Because now she knows that the evidence that was submitted, especially the Kakao Talk messages, which they did not say were untrue. So she's just saying like, oh, these are private conversations, you shouldn't be releasing them. But her lawyers and her did not say, oh, those are so false. So she really did say all that fat shaming stuff about New Jeans and the Bunny fans. And she really did say all of those timeline sequences with plotting her stealing of New Jeans and the company ADOR and sabotaging HYBE in the process. And she really did talk to her shaman. And she did say, though, throughout the press conference, like, oh, well, I don't remember text messages from 3 years ago, do you? The fat shaming and the planning, that was just from 3 months ago. So already she's misdirecting. So this whole thing was very much all about misdirect. But why would she focus so much on being a human, saying like, oh, I'm human too? Because what she's saying is like, she knows that, wow, there's a lot of people who are now doubting her and seeing the evidence against her as her taking bad actions. And even the court ruling says that, fine, we can't legally make a judgment, or this judge did not make a legal judgment that the evidence presented so far would justify firing her from ADOR, but it does show that she took steps to betray HYBE's trust and basically sabotage HYBE. So she's saying that she's human because we all can make mistakes. And I think her main message here was, I'm a human too, because she did something wrong, but she also doesn't directly want to apologize. Instead of apologizing, she's just blaming it on being human. But most importantly, what's her play with that? She doesn't want retaliation from HYBE. And not only that, she wants to be able to characterize any kind of response, stern actions from HYBE as harming another human. So this is the play I think she's taking, because the main message was, we won, but there was a tinge of desperation. Like, she goes back from like gloating to, probably getting reminded of what the lawyers are saying is just like, okay, well, we got this far, but that was probably like the first base camp of hiking Mount Everest. And the other main message was, let's let bygones be bygones and start a fresh chapter. Again, that's another statement saying like, please don't hurt me for everything I did to you. If you did the same thing back to me, that would probably destroy her. So she's trying to already create a framework that would trap HYBE in a vulnerable position so that they couldn't take as forceful of actions than they would if she actually succeeds in this manipulation, because it would look like HYBE, the big corporate bully, is harming not a CEO shown by the court to have committed acts of malfeasance against the parent company, but she wants to erase the image of her as being the scheming CEO and just replace it with human, which is very ironic because humans have lines that they don't cross. Even if you might want to in a fit of rage or something like that, and being human, we make mistakes, but also being human, there's a limiting factor. She doesn't have that limiting factor, and yet she wants to be considered human because she knows when people like this manipulate, they manipulate on the goodwill of human nature. Because if I keep attacking you really sneakily and suddenly, okay, you know the game, and you are upset and angry about what I did to you, of course you'd retaliate. But she's trying to nip that in the bud by saying, hey, we're all human, and shouldn't you, basically have your human conscience go into overdrive and then not attack me, and let's let bygones be bygones and move on to a new chapter? She must not read a lot of books, because not every next chapter is roses and cashmere. A lot of the times, especially as you're advancing through the plot, the next chapter is worse. There's a lot more conflict, there's a lot more drama, and it all's going to go to the ultimate battle of the climax of the story. And here she is. She's like trying to turn the TV off in the middle of the movie because she knows that we're at a turning point. The Korean public has turned against her. The media, she pissed off the media. The worst thing for like the media and these reporters is to be in a situation where they have to admit that they were fooled, because that is one of the biggest currencies of trust for that business. So if you're a reporter and you are just, a lot of you did, but none of them are going to admit it, and so they're gonna take that out on her. So she don't read books, and then she don't know really the personality of reporters. So from the last press conference, we saw a lot of the coverage seem very stilted towards Min Hee-jin's side. Sound bites of her wild claims and accusations, asking the public to view her opinion of what's going on, not the facts of the situation. And you can't have the entire news story cover the entire press conference, so they had to selectively cut. In a similar situation in this time around, the selective cuts were a lot more critical of Min Hee-jin. And one of the big things I think you guys have seen is when one of the reporters asked to hear about how she feels about the other K-pop groups, especially within the HYBE family, that also got hurt by this conflict. And her response was classic narcissism. Oh, well, we were hurt too, New Jeans especially, and I'm a human too, The thing is, who threw the first stone? Who started all of this? Of course, she keeps saying, and the reason why I'm suspicious is that she keeps saying things that she's lying about. And so she said that, oh, well, I didn't start this whole conflict. She's trying to say that it's all about like copying, and then HYBE bullying her or not saying hello back. And they've kind of, look, when we looked at these statements, it was only one of the New Jeans girls who said it seemed like Chairman Bang didn't say hello to me back. How is that on the same level of betrayal? So her betrayal that HYBE says that she did was that she had this whole master plan, and she started to implement it. HYBE thinks that she started to implement it. The court still doesn't agree that she started to implement it, but for that she says, oh, that's just a joke. That's not betrayal, that's a joke. But then one teenager who thinks that maybe the chairman of the entire HYBE corporation might not have said hello back in the elevator, that counts as betrayal. So these are the people have kind of, I think, woken up from the fog of her cosplay and realized that she's not the Joan of Arc to take women's liberation in Korea to the next step, that she's actually hiding behind that. I think a lot of these reporters are ashamed, or they got, criticized, because let's start with the reporters, because you don't want to keep talking about Min Hee-jin's positions, because then you waste all of your time and energy, and you're really trapping yourself into the legal framework that she feels like she can win and that your evidence really can't break through on. You have to shift the legal framework to something that you, as HYBE, can win, and her evidence or her rebuttals can't break through. And so she was at about 35 minutes into this press conference, and this was again an emergency press conference where people had to drop what they were doing and rush over to this place. And one reporter, before the Q&A got started, when Min Hee-jin was going on and on about like, oh, how she donated the college performance fees to charity because a lot of people from the rural areas of Korea don't really have a chance to see K-pop. They can't afford it, and so this is one of their only opportunities. And then she goes on a tangent, right? And my philosophy with making money is, to actually get large amounts from rich people and not collect little bits from the poor people. Now, the way that I just recited that sounds horrible. The way that she thought it sounded was that she's just going to take money from rich people and, not exploit people with less money and take little bits and try to add it all up together. But I think she really showed her hands. That's what she did. She went after the big money, and she's not gonna, and then she's looking down on the ordinary people. And so it was like, oh, you don't have any money. And so she was going on and on about that, and then a reporter, oh my god, this was the shadiest, best reporter. And this was before question time, so usually question time they ask you to state your name and where you report from, but she just interrupted. Oh, this girl, I want to meet this girl, I don't know who this girl was. And actually, I think the first question was from an AP reporter, or very early on, and they were miscategorized as saying that was the report. So that wasn't the reporter. So the reporter said, sorry to interrupt, but time is limited. And so she put it in the passive voice. And Min Hee-jin was like, oh, I have extra time. I can extend my time. I like the last time, like, oh, I can go all out. People don't want all hours. And I think reporters last time just played into her vanity. But I can tell you, these reporters, when they got back into the newsroom, they most likely would be sweating bullets themselves, also under pressure by their newsroom directors and producers to get out a story. And more than that, the technical team doing all the video editing, cutting the sound bites, and they don't want to sift through 2 hours of footage to try to find the different sound bites. they were probably pissed off because they were just like, she just rambles and rambles and rambles. How are we gonna, where do we cut this? And how do we make a coherent story? She ruined everybody's nights. I swear, judging from my experience there. And so she said, oh, I have extra time. So she totally failed the nunchi system because the reporter was basically saying, I don't have time for this. We need to get to the point. And so she was even, the reporter, the shady reporter, was even interrupting Min Hee-jin's answers to this. And the reporter said like, okay, we don't have time. So could you speak faster? And Min Hee-jin had no empathy and she fought back. And then she said, Min Hee-jin said, oh, this is important to me. I need to tell this story about her philosophy of like, donating performances to rural people who are gonna come up. They're not coming up, okay? She said, okay, I'll finish my story. Min Hee-jin said, I'll finish my story and take your question first because you might have to leave soon. And so, like Mean Girl, basically saying like, I don't like you, so I want you to get out of here first. And then the reporter just interrupted and she said, we came here on a dime because of you. So sorry, could you please make concise answers and answer our questions? Because there's a lot of things that we want to ask you about. And then that sort of kicked off the reporter time a bit early. She probably was going to go all the way to the hour and 10 mark and then say like, oh, I think we might have some time for questions. But no, they wanted to get their questions in because they already know what she's about. They kind of know where the story's going and they want to hear her side so that they can plug it in and finally maybe give a balanced perspective. But you know what the worst part of this exchange was? Min Hee-jin fought back and she kind of looked at this reporter like in shock that she would be talked back to like this. And then she said, oh, I'm sorry. It's always, I'm sorry, but you know what? They're not sorry. She said, I'm sorry, but I don't think you should be getting mad at me. The reporter was like, look, we're on a deadline. There's a lot of questions that we want to ask you. So, amazing. So what did Min Hee-jin say about the ruling? She said that the court ruled in her favor and that it cleared her of false accusations by HYBE, which is absolutely not true. It was just HYBE's evidence was insufficient for their legal framework, like I said yesterday, of the question of whether this could cancel a contract with ADOR, not HYBE. And so that, I think, is now becoming very clear why Min Hee-jin really pushed for this sort of corporate substructure, because now HYBE's like, damn, she played this, from the beginning, because it insulates her, because she can launch all these attacks at HYBE, but as long as the court doesn't see that it affects and hurts ADOR, then she's somewhat in the clear, or she was able, at least in this round, to win the legal argument there. She was also asked, hey, well, just that morning, you had 2 of your deputies fired from the board of directors. Now it's essentially all of these other people from HYBE that are going to be now the ADOR team. Can you work with them? And she says, it's going to be hard working with them, of course, but so that things don't fall apart, I need to have an adult mindset and be patient and suffer through it, even if I hate, working with others. Because she's said that she doesn't like too much of this stuffy corporate structure, and she doesn't like K-pop to become so systematized that it turns into a factory. I don't know, but hello, SM. It's like the first K-pop factory. But she doesn't like all of these hindrances to creative expression, she says. But the ironic thing is that if it weren't for people like her, there would be a lot more independence of the labels. They have to create now more corporate safeguards because of people like her who are thieving. So you have to create some sort of systems now to make sure that you're not gonna get blindsided and then have your company fail because somebody in the name of artistic freedom was actually, working more like a thief in the night. And she kept saying, like, I'm the one that was wounded. I'm the one that was wounded the most, I think. And then she even brought up her MBTI because she says, oh, because I'm an ENTP. And she's sort of like trying to laugh and like, kind of recall some of the audience that she had in her pocket the last time. But the mood in the room was so much different. It was chilly. It was like I'm saying, you pissed off these reporters, and these reporters, to get back some of their pride and their dignity and also for their job security, they're going into the other mode, basically like, calling you out. Okay, so she was asked about, well, all right, so you were able to win this temporary injunction, but the ruling still said that you betrayed HYBE. What do you think of that? And there she goes again, like as if she is the president of the Oxford Dictionary. She is redefining betrayal. Or actually, well, in Korea, the Korean dictionary, like maybe even like Naver dictionary. And she says, well, how could it be betrayal? Because I made so much money for HYBE. If I didn't make so much money for HYBE, how can I be betraying them? I think, this whole issue of betrayal should be really judged in how much money is going into the company and how, I perform as a CEO. Didn't she just say before that it's not about the money and it's about artistic freedom? And not only that, so what she's doing is she's misdirecting, and then she's focusing it on a part of data where she thinks would impress people and that works in her favor, and seems like the buck stops there of like, oh yeah, well, she made a lot of profits for ADOR. Now that's where the misdirection is. She's trying to say she made a lot of money for HYBE, but really she's making money for ADOR. Why? Because the more profit she makes, the higher her stock options go. And she kind of said something about like, oh, it's also gonna benefit the shareholders. And she's making you think in your mind she's talking about the shareholders of HYBE. That is not true. She is making more profits for ADOR, and ADOR is not traded on the stock market. She said, oh, everybody can be a shareholder by buying one stock of HYBE. So she's part of HYBE when it's convenient for her, and she's not part of HYBE when it's convenient for her or essential to her survival in this case. And 80% of the shareholders of ADOR is HYBE. So she's not making sense. And I think the rewards are just like now going crazy because they can't just lead with, wow, look at this woman who is standing up for women in the workplace, because that whole identity, I told you she maxed out her woman's card and she's turning it in, and nobody's taking her fraudulent like Human Platinum Express. Okay, so moving forward, what can happen from now? She alluded that the fastest board meeting that can occur is June 10th, which is not that far away. Now, this injunction was a temporary injunction for May 31st. Now, it's unclear whether this injunction extends until the end of her contract, or if actually HYBE, if they wanted to play it this way, they just call board meeting after board meeting and make her file injunction, make her file an injunction each time. And if HYBE did that, I could see how, this is what I would do if I were HYBE. It's call a lot of these board meetings, and with the threat of she might get fired, and then have her file these injunctions, and then have HYBE in response focus on just one talking point, one messaging point. The problem with HYBE's position right now is that there's no clear path in terms of the court of public opinion, and then also it seems like they're having a tougher time creating shifting out of her legal framework. And the reason why I say this is that she spilled the beans in the first press conference when she was saying like, I don't agree with how HYBE will probably frame this issue. And she even used, I think she used the word frame, like the English word frame. It's amazing. She uses a lot of English words, you know, like while she's speaking Korean as well. And so do a lot of Korean people these days. But she is, in her mind, I think she was thinking already about the legal framework. And so I think HYBE has to really shift it over to their legal framework where they are in the advantage, because the legal question for her in this case was just the injunction. But now the ball's in HYBE's court about like how they're gonna, you know, go about this. And I think it would be good if they want to not like show all their cards at once, but at the same time they want to try to do something slowly. This might be a measured way to, you know, test out each case as like a dress rehearsal and see if, like, you know, maybe she'll quit before preview week. And so each injunction could be like a specific one single HYBE message strategy. But really the silver bullet route, I think, for HYBE is they need to focus on the evidence that proves that she enacted her plan, because I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure there's also some receipts about like the media play that they said that they were going to do a media play, and already the time has passed from the media play. So I don't think those people were doing it for free. So I think that evidence could be uncovered, or whatever the court and the judges most likely will count as, because it's not like what you think or I think or what, you know, even the lawyers think. It's kind of like what the judges think within the context of the law that has to a lot of the times be interpreted. So the judge is interpreting the law, so you're trying to anticipate how they're going to interpret it. So you try to give them the easy prepackaged meal of answers and say like, this is applicable to her enacting the plan, because that is where the train is stuck. Is that like, did HYBE really stop her 100% before she was able to get started? That's definitely Min Hee-jin's position, saying that like, I didn't do anything. And even, you know, all these things that, you know, you might have found as messages were just jokes. And her other popular go-to response has been like, and it's impossible for me to do because I'm a minority shareholder. There's no way I could have done it, where she already had the plan of how she could do it. And so what I don't like is that the reporters didn't ask if like, okay, yeah, you were fantasizing about it, but then you're making it sound like you just gave up because it's impossible. But were it possible, what would you have done? That's what I would ask. I would just add and see like her trying to spin up a lie. Because she reframed all of her actions as imaginary planning, and that had no connection to an actual action that would enact those plans. So HYBE really needs to get on that. Or a lot of you have talked about, aren't there conspiracy laws? You know, definitely, like if you're planning a murder and they stop you before you do it, or if you're planning a terrorist attack and they stop you before you do it, that, I think even in Korea, you would get in trouble. But I think where it's getting hung up on is that you gotta know the judge's mind. Like, are they thinking of this as like, oh, it's just like they're stealing a K-pop group, or is it actually like a case of like intellectual property theft? Or, you know, if it was like trade secrets, if this was like a case with like Samsung semiconductors and there were people within the semiconductor division hatching a whole plan to steal the nanotechnological like IP or whatever and sell it off, and then for them to say, oh, it was just joking, I don't think the judge would have the same reaction. Because as we've seen before with the whole BTS military enlistment issue, that group of people in power are really biased against K-pop. And so they just don't see it kind of like as the same. Hello, equality. But, I think maybe some of that is there. And so HYBE has to really kind of spin it out of, this is not just teenagers dancing around, This is really, now that they have conglomerate status, an issue of corporate law that will affect other corporations. So he needs to call up Mr. EJ and say like, bring and look, Min Hee-jin's about to bring us down. And also like, you better watch your semiconductors, because all those, people down there might be hatching a plot inspired by Min Hee-jin. The other thing that, if you're looking at Korean culture, is this whole question of jishi. Jishi means order. So that means basically like, if one person who is even in a very top position gets a direct order from somebody higher than them, they can say like, oh, well, the person above me ordered me, so therefore I have less culpability because I was carrying out the plan, and it goes to the top, and the person ultimately responsible is the one that gave the order. That happened in the Seoul ferry incident, because a lot of people, that ship that sank with all the students, and where the captain said stay in your rooms, and then he got off the boat and then he let everybody drown. So everyone's saying like, oh, the buck stopped with the captain, right? That it was the captain who was responsible. But no, actually, people even in the Korean public really just bypassed the captain. They kind of didn't really even see him as like a central figure. They were going after the chairman of the holding company of the shipping group. And so in that case, the law went straight up, and they blamed the chairman and the chairman's decisions for cutting corners and manipulating the situation. And they're saying that even manipulating like the search and rescue, and he was found guilty. And so I don't understand how this is not a similar situation where we have more evidence of direct action by ADOR's VPs under the orders of Min Hee-jin. So I don't know why this whole like jishi kind of thing is not percolating up so that she is held responsible for the actions. So let's say she doesn't do the murder, but she orders somebody to do the murder, and she says like, well, I didn't do anything. That was just a joke. I don't know why he went after it. But if they can establish that she gave the order, then she should get in trouble. So I don't understand, like, what is the confusion with this initial set of judges? So what did you guys think? What did you find most shocking about this press conference? I just wanted to focus on her manipulation tactics and where we might go from here, and also to really focus on how it looks like the Korean public has turned on her. A lot of the comments in the Korean media are saying no, after they've seen what they've seen, people put two and two together. They don't believe her anymore. All right, guys, put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.